and welcome to AK Podcast, where we explore science and nutrition behind livestock care and management with the best and the brightest in the business. I'm your host, Chris Radke, part of the sales and marketing team here at Agri-King, and with me today, as usual, is the Director of Field Services and a member of the sales management team, Mr. Mike Donaldson. How you doing, Mike?
Very well, Chris. Kind of excited. This is a part 2.
Yeah.
And I don't even think we did a cliffhanger at the end of part 1. So I hope people just came back because it was that interesting.
Came back for a little more of Mr. Parker. All right, would you like to reintroduce
So
Parker
like you
Snider?
said, Chris, we are joined today by Parker Snider, Agri-King's robot technical specialist, with part 2 of our discussion on robots on farms. Welcome back, Parker.
Thanks for having me.
So if you haven't listened or watched part 1 with Parker, you may want to, but if you just want to dive in with part 2, I don't think you'll have any trouble keeping up. In part 1, Parker, we spent a lot of time on the history and some of the basics of milking with robots, and we're focusing mostly right now on robot boxes, the classic Lely or DeLaval. The robotic carousels are also robots, but not quite the difference in the way a cow lives her day, the way the boxes are. So to start today, would you please explain the difference between free flow and controlled flow setups around milking in boxes, please?
Yeah, so I just want to give a little shout out to the other companies in the world of robotics. There's Fullwood, who would be Galaxy here in the States, and Gia's out there. We have Bomatic, and there's 5 major ones, but Lely and DeLaval seem to be the ones that are having the most success in the industry. And there's different approaches with each company and how they want to approach feeding cattle and robots and how they want to entice them to come. And so a free flow setup is to where these boxes get installed into the barn and cows can come and go as they want. So they can come up to the robot, they wait in line just like at lunch, right? Like they know where the food's at, so they're going to wait in line their turn and come up. In the guided flow systems, there's 2 different concepts, a fully guided system or a semi-guided system. And I don't want to get too much into the details of all of that here today, but the fully guided system is those animals, if they need to get milk, they come up from their bedding area, they come to a sort gate, and it says, hey, you're not ready to be milked yet. We're going to kick you over to the feed fence. Hey, you're close enough to be milked. We're going to kick you over to the robots in the holding area to be milked. And then after that, there's another sort gate that will direct them if they need any attention into a separation pen typically, or it'll send them back to the feed fence. On a semi-guided system, you're going to see to where those animals have some access to feed before they even hit that sort gate. But then if they want to get back to the bedding area, they have to come through the robots, be milked, and then they get routed back to the rest of the feed fence in order to get to the bedding area. And some farms are set up to where you have to come to the robot if you want feed. Some other farms are set up to where you go to feed first before you get to the robot. So that is the difference.
Is there any evolution taking place on the guided flows that we used to do it this way? We used to do feed and then milk. Now we want to milk and do feed. Is that something that's evolving?
It's each farm has their own approach and idea, and the level of success of each one of these different farms is based off what the farmer needs. I'm a little biased one way more than the other, but whether it's feed first or milk first, that's a farmer decision on what they want to do. They both have a little bit different of approach, but really just trying to accomplish the same things. If you want to get to feed, you got to come to the robot, or if you want to go lay down, you got to come to the feed fence to get through the robot to lay down. So,
Okay. No, that makes good sense. So let's pretend I'm a dairyman. I have a freestall barn. It's not that old. I'm trying to decide, do I want to put robots, refit my existing barn, or should I just build from scratch? are there existing facilities that are just hard to make work well with robots, or can you kind of make anything work?
Um, Planning is a big part of retrofitting robots into an existing facility. And I've seen them retrofitted into flat barns. I've seen them retrofitted into tie stall barns and retrofitted into freestall barns. There's concepts that need to be considered when doing that, right? And a lot of times I see when we do these retrofits is I'm trying to get this system put in at the least amount of cost as I can. And we kind of justify spending 20 grand less because we didn't expand the concrete a little bit further and maybe make it a little bit better. Whether we added a separation pen to where cows can be routed to if they need to be bred, or they're looking like they're possibly sick to be routed and waiting for us, or there's provisions for a foot bath, or even I'm going to say one of the big things around robots and retrofitting is good airflow, right? And good lighting. We need to make sure these environments are very comfortable for the cow, especially because it's a volunteer thing that we're wanting these cows to feel like when they walk up to these boxes, it's the most comfortable place in the barn. The whole barn should be comfortable, but we want them to feel like they're vacationing while they're milking, right? And they're coming up to eat the Skittles, which for maybe some of us it's ice cream, whatever your preference is. We want this environment to be very enticing and comfortable for them. And so when we're planning that, for Agri-King, we're not at that stage typically, but we do have farmers that want to put them in. We're trying to come in and help farmers who have already made these decisions. But that is a part of some of the guidance that I encourage our people to talk with their farmers about when they're considering leaving the parlor and going to robots. Make an addition off your barn instead of just trying to squeeze it into the wall and have as minimal cost. Maybe spending a little bit extra will go a lot further and make these systems a lot more effective. And I think that's been frustration too on farmers' ends is they were able to get it done, but it didn't work well because they didn't consider the other factors of what they didn't know, right? They just didn't know what they didn't know. And so educating our farmers on how to plan for that is really important, I feel, for our team to understand as we continue to support farmers in this endeavor.
If we switch over to completely new construction, any pointers there about something maybe you want to really be sure that the contractor maybe has some experience or a better awareness that, yeah, it's cows, yeah, it's a barn, but it is a robotically built barn, and we have to be sure that we've allowed for this. I mean, you mentioned something like ventilation, which is going to be important in a new facility as well, but any other things to look at as far as, I got to get this right if it's going to work for me?
Yeah, I would say that all the things that we talk about with robotic farms still apply to parlor milking herd, right? I feel like we have learned so much um, on the robotic side about the importance of cow comfort. We understand this on the dairy side as well, but those things really show up in robots as it is a volunteer process to get these cows to come to these robots. And so, a few of the things I talked about when we're retrofitting is air, space, water. We need to have easy access. But then, on a newly built barn, like let's make sure that we have enough area up around the robots to be able to allow these cows to intermingle without being bullied on a very small playground, right? You cows just need to be able to come up and linger and come in and milk without feeling the stress of being pinched, right? Cows don't want to be backed in a corner. So that is a big part of that too, is having enough space for them to move around and do what they want to freely. Another thing to consider on a new construction barn is if you have multiple pens with robots in them. I personally like to have all those robots facing the same direction because cows get used to that. In a parlor system, if you have a left side and a right side, some cows don't want to be touched on one side or the other. They get comfortable with what they do. And so that's one of the other things is I like to have all the robots facing the same direction so that arms coming in and they don't have a disruption. Now I understand that some people in their layouts that Maybe they feel the barn gets a little bit longer, or there's added concrete. But that robot that's facing the opposite direction, you may not get the efficiency out of that robot is what you do. Let's say if you had a 3 robot pen, it may not have the same efficiency as what the other two do. If you're going to do fetch pins, and some people, what we started out with was permanent fetch pins in the robot industry, and what I found a lot of guys doing now is just using gates to make a temporary fetch pin to allow animals to come in and be milked. Um, Oftentimes there's a swing gate at the entrance of the robot. So for me, I prefer to have a swing gate there to where my fetch pin, I can get my cows fetched and walk away. And I'm going to let them get milked, and even the cows in the rest of the barn, they can still come up and be milked by swinging that gate. Now, those animals that are in the fetch pen, maybe they're not as aggressive. They're more timid animals. So if they are just standing there in that fetch pen and not coming, that robot's not just sitting there down until you come back to push them into the robot. But that's just a preference thing, but something to consider when doing that. Routing areas. What I mean by that is a lot of farms are doing areas to route animals out of the robot. If they have been milked and they need to be bred, they have, some type of health event, or let's even say like you're doing routine hoof trimming every week, and you can route 5 cows on Monday to be trimmed, right, to get their maintenance trim. You can route these animals in that area, and they're waiting for you to be dealt with. You're not disrupting the whole pen of cattle to be able to deal with these animals. You route them, you trim them, you run them back in, and the rest of the pen had no idea that anything even happened. So that's a big one for me. Like I had one farmer tell me one time, I can't even put a pencil to the price that I paid for that, how much it has paid me back in return. It's nice when he comes to the barn in the morning to just see those animals need attention, get them done, open a gate, and they're back to the barn. He doesn't have to go looking for them. And so when you're in a parlor situation, it was what it was. You had to go out in the barn, lock the free stalls up, or lock the headlocks up, and deal with it and breed cows and things. I mean, it's funny because I know farmers who have even bred cows laying down in free stalls. And it's like, how in the heck can you do that? Like these environments change, these cows change, and they're so relaxed that they're not stressed out. And so fans, obviously good ventilation in a new construction barn. You see that has evolved tremendously in the dairy industry, that we just put fans on fans on fans on fans because we understand how important heat abatement is. And not only heat abatement, but for flies, right? Like it helps cows stay comfortable. Bedding, whether you're going to do canvas or deep bedded sand or manure salads, whatever your choice is, we just need to make sure that our bedding is set up properly, that we can get in there and do what we need to do and get out of the barn with at least amount of disruption, right? So we have a routine. And with that, I'm going to tie that in with foot baths. So it seems like foot baths can be an afterthought. A lot of farms have put it on the other end of the barn, and so twice a week they run all the cows on one side of the barn. They run them down the other end of the barn. They come in, and then they come back through, and that's when they choose to do their bedding. And if that's the best situation and setup, then you run them on one side of the barn, you do your bedding, you run them all the way through, you do the bedding on the other side. Is it a disruption? Yes, it is, but they're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Or maybe it's better to say they're getting 2 tasks done at the same time. They're being very efficient with their time. And
Yeah.
or you put a foot bath on the exit of the robot and make accommodations to where it's not disrupting that open area I was talking about, so cows can move around freely. It's not just like, oh, we threw a plastic tub down and we made it work, like we could build provisions on the exit of the robot to have a permanent foot bath built into place to where they walk out of the robot, they go through it, they go back into the barn, and it's not a disruption at all to that pen. You got a plug in the bottom, you pull it, you drain it, you got a spigot right there, it fills it with water, so there's just those little things. But once it's built, it's there, and so you're not going to want to go back and spend the money to fix what you didn't know. So
Now, I think, and you've alluded to this a couple times, I've sat at a farm's desk. I've worked a little bit with the dashboard for these different systems. I think that's one of the most impressive things, besides not having to milk cows and get hit in the head with a switch or something, is the extra information that's coming off these robotic systems and the ability to be a better manager. What are some of the things that are on those dashboards that are, I mean, I understand Dairy Comp, PC Dart, the numbers we're used to getting, how far we've come since it was whatever the bulk take average is, and that was all we had. But what are some of the truly unique things that a robot system will give you, and actually you need to be managing around as well? Maybe a few examples.
Well, one of the biggest things, sometimes the transition can be hard for farmers. Going from the parlor mentality, and I don't say that as an insult, but it's just the way we've always done it, right? And it's like, okay, now I got to adapt to a new routine. It's like selling the 40/20 tractor and getting into a new cab tractor with guidance. Like, your world's spinning, right? And so it just depends on the farmer how well they adapt to this, right? It's like I used to stand in my parlor 8 hours a day or whatever and see these cows, touch these cows, feel these cows. How is this screen going to tell me what's going on with my cows? And it's because of the activity monitoring that we have. They're wearing collars. Some of them have wore the ankle bracelets. You know, they're not in prison. They are really in paradise. Or even now we're getting to the point where we can read the ear chips that they're doing. So it's really cool to see how that's happened. Um, and just one other thing is like, you know, in these systems, we're uninvited guests into these farms, right? So if I came to your house, Mike, and I didn't even knock on the door. I just opened up the door. I came in, I took my shoes off and I sat down on the couch and I said, here I am. Whether you wanted me there or not, I am here. And so that's an
You'd you'd always be welcome, Parker, but I get the idea.
yeah. But you know, that's kind of the big part of what I'm talking about with parlor mentality is like we told the cows always what they will be doing, kind of like children. And so understanding when we are in these barns that we're an uninvited guest, this is their world, this is their home. And so our interactions with them changes, or it should change, I should say, to where we can handle these cows different because it is a low stress environment. And it's just a part of learning to socialize yourself in these facilities. We don't have to get out the tools, I should say, to manage these animals. We're going to be working with them and directing them. And so with, you know, talking about the dashboard and what's showing and data, like all of that is great. But we still have to walk cows. We still have to observe and look at our cows. The computer isn't everything. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it really gives us great information. And so that it gets us then to start our process. Okay, how do we want to handle this? So we're going to go out in the barn while we're fetching cows and be more observant of these animals that maybe have health attentions or these animals that are in heat, for instance. Maybe we're going to see if there's a standing heat going on and making these observations. And this is why it's important to have these routing areas, I believe, because when they finally do come up and get milked, those animals are dealt with. We don't have to go out and like disrupt the barn like, oh, this cow's sick. These systems actually will catch that they're trending downward and route them before they get sick, and we can deal with them on the front end instead of reacting and having to give a bottle of calcium, you know, in the manure alley or in the freestall. Last thing is like on the dashboard, what that is for those of you who are new to the robot world, they put on their key performance indicators that are really like dashboard icons in your car. You know, if your car's running too hot or too cold, or if the battery's charging too much or too little. These parameters are showing us which way we're going in these systems. And so a lot of the dashboards are pretty standard. They have all the same KPIs, key performance indicators. And each farmer is probably going to look at a lot of the same things, but maybe digest it a little differently in making decisions on what to do and how the performance of that barn is handling each and every day. And then beyond that, there's thousands of reports we can look at to make decisions if we want to change something management wise or with the animal's diet.
One of the things that amuses me, because I grew up way back when, before TMRs, and you fed grain outside of everything else. And then we got TMRs, and in tie stall barns, we fed a little bit of grain sometimes. and then we got nothing but TMRs, and now we've got the ability to feed some grain in a robot machine, and it's freaking people out. What am I supposed to do? This is not all mixed together. And it's like, well, yeah, we did it this way for years, but for a lot of people, that's almost the biggest confusing stumbling block about milking with robots is what am I supposed to do with it? The PMR at the bunk and the feed through the robot. What do you see as the opportunities and challenges that feeding that grain separate from the rest of the ration can give us?
Yeah. No, good question. I think for yourself, you've seen these evolutions of feeding dairy cattle, right? Feed a little haylage, feed a little corn silage. It's a scoop. We didn't weigh nothing, dribble a little grain, and that was what they got. Well, if we dribble a little extra grain, she milked a little more when she came in. And so, we've evolved and we got the TMR mixer and we fed a TMR and we've seen the success of that as everything's weighed out and calculated and performance. It's great, right? And so now I've heard a lot of conversations about, well, it's like a high producer top dress or, we're component feeding. I choose to keep it simple, Mike, and let's not make it overly complicated. I like to say it's a TMR, but 20% of that is fed through the robot. And that's just a rough number, right? But like there's just a portion of what is presented to that cow that's being fed through that parlor. And yeah, we used to feed in parlors and we got away from that because we went to TMR and but I say let's keep it simple. And we really like for here at Agri-King, we developed some tools that have helped us to analyze how much of that energy is coming from the bunk, how much dry matter intake. And so we just want to keep it balanced. We're going to keep it simple, not overthink it, but yet get the best utilization of our money out of each individual cow and try to make sure that we're optimizing that as we set up feed tables so that they can express themselves to their full potential. And so, it's if you jumped into a guided system tractor today, Mike, you might be like, okay, what buttons do I press? But once you got it, you got it. And then you get in, you don't think about it and you just do the thing. And, it becomes simple. So for those people that are just getting into it, not knowing, uh, it can seem daunting, but it's not overly daunting. And we're going to continue to support and create things that will allow us to make better decisions here at Agri-King for these robotic milking farmers. But we're really on a good track with where we started and where we've come to, and I'm excited to see where it takes us.
Parker, I think that kind of brings us to a nice logical end to part two. I will warn you and let everybody else know this is not the last time Chris and I are going to ask you to help with this. You do a great job of explaining things and helping people understand. Any final observations on robots, the part we've talked about so far in parts 1 and 2?
I would just say this: if you're a farmer watching this and making decisions on what to do, where to go, reach out to one of our nutrition consultants in your area and have a conversation. We really want to make sure that if you're making this decision to help you, and you're going to have your local dealer help you, and the manufacturers of these companies really have want to come in and help. But if you're like, man, I just want another opinion of somebody who's seen a lot of systems, we're here to help. And don't do it alone. Take your time making the decision, because when you make that decision to invest and go this route, you're committed. And we just want to make sure that you're making the commitment to everything that really this whole system could mean to your farm, and make sure it's a success story.
That is perfect. So, Chris, what did we learn today?
Hey, I have a follow-up question for Parker. What do you see as maybe the future for robotics, or what would you like to see, I guess?
Yeah,
Because it's technology driven, so it's always going to be evolving into something.
Yeah, very much so. I think with these systems, there's a lot of buzz in the industry right now about different approaches and concepts, and that's how we evolve, right? People challenging the status quo of what we've done and getting better. My biggest thing is whether you choose to go automated or not, I want to see these farms be successful and continue to stay around. I don't want to see farmers choosing to just leave the industry because it didn't work or it's too much or this or that. So, my biggest thing is just if you're going to make these decisions and you want to stay around, but you don't know how, consider it, right? Consider what we're doing, considering where this can go. And I really think that for myself, it's going to be, at the end of the day, this robotic milking system, I don't think is going to be this cookie cutter approach. I think you're going to see a lot of different varieties and flavors of what each farm decides what they want. And it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I hate to say it. I know we've been doing this thing since 1992, but we're still in those pioneering stages, right? We're seeing worldwide adaptation to these systems. So it's really going to, I think, evolve over the next 10 years and change a lot. But the foundation's still going to be the same. And that's because we want to stay in the business of milking cows. And so it's exciting times.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some good stuff. My big takeaway is when I hear the word term robotics, and I think a lot of people are this way, you hear this harshness, you think of metal or whatever, but Parker talked a lot about, and I know Don said this too, how you want to make it a vacation spot for your animals. So they're cared for, and the gentleness of it. You don't want to cram them in spaces. And I picture Parker with a nice little robe, and he's going to be patting his car, his animals as they come through the milking robotics. So I think it's fascinating as opposed to this harsh computerized metal that I kind of envisioned, I guess. So if you like what we talked about, if you like what we were discussing, you can hit us up on any of our socials. If you have a question or if you have something you'd like us to talk about, you can email us at podcast@agriking.com. Parker and Mike, thank you very much and have a great day.